Hi, I am Aura mostly. I'm pretty sure I've listed everybody else who's close inside. I'm doing a lot of aggressive grounding to hopefully be able to film, and we're just gonna see how it goes. I'm gonna try to film a video about internal communication. It seems relevant because that's one of the things that we're having more trouble with the system stuff that's been going on. So it's one of the things that we're working on. This is functioning basically as grounding cam, I guess. But I have a scented candle going behind me and essential oils, and this is a rock with a bunch of different textures and stuff on it, and I have a fidget ring on and all kinds of stuff. So Charlie is eating, so she's not currently in Charlie cam, but she might be at some point in the video. We'll see. I'm also listening to music that should be grounding. We'll see if it ends up being too distracting, but I'm hoping it's going to be grounding and give me an idea, because I'm listening through an album, that it'll give me an idea of time. Although I can look at how long I've been filming too, which is another thing that helps. But yeah, okay. So this is a video that would have been ideal for Jaden to film before splitting, because this was Jaden's specialty. It would still potentially be better, I guess, for a gatekeeper to film it, but I know a lot of the information. There is some background noise that I'm hoping is done, so I'm going to see if I can remember what I was saying when it started. We've had this video in the works planning-wise for long enough that hopefully we got input from gatekeepers and stuff about anything that I might not have thought to put on it, but I also know a lot of the information generally anyway from just like talking about it and watching other alters talk about it in therapy and with other people and stuff. So but we could also always make a part 2 if I miss some things, or if anything changes and we want to add stuff later. Alright, I've got Charlie grounding me too now, so this should also help. So internal communication was Jaden's specialty. Jaden was better at it in some important ways than even our gatekeepers. They had communication with some alters who no one else that we know of has communication with them. Or potentially like things like communication with a small group that is otherwise isolated from everybody else, but they can talk to each other, or maybe one member of a group like that, things like that. Which, as far as I know, it's still true that we haven't solved that problem. We just still don't have communication with any of those alters. But there are aspects of internal communication that almost everyone in our system does, and so there are varying levels of how much of it any given alter can do, and there are kind of different categories. So I'm going to start talking about the one that most of us have some amount of, which is close inside, like the inner world equivalent of like talking in person, where they're in the same place and they're talking to each other in our inner world. And that's basically how it would work for most altars. There's some amount of like nonverbal versions of that I know less about. And we have some altars who can't communicate verbally inside either, especially like pre-verbal, very, very young littles. But a lot of our altars who can't talk in the front, like for other reasons, can communicate in some way inside. I'm not sure if it's different than like the inside equivalent of talking, because I know there's some amount of communication inside that's closer to like thinking at each other, and that involves a different level of like communication ability between those altars. But that gets complicated, and I know less about that. Not everyone can communicate with everyone else, even if they are close by each other inside. That usually in our system manifests as not being able to be in the same areas, like you can't access the place where those altars are. But it can also be that you are in the same place, but you can't even see that the other altar is there. I think Charlie has decided that I have grounded enough. Go ahead. Some of our altars are able to intentionally not be perceived like that inside. But I don't think that's the only way that that happens. I think sometimes communication will be completely cut off in a way that altars won't have awareness of each other, even if they're like physically close to each other inside. Like for instance, if they're both around the front is probably when that happens the most, where like if there's someone I have literally no communication with and they're around the front, I probably won't notice, or I'll notice things like extra dissociation, but not have any communication or awareness of them. It's also different for me because I can't see inside. I'm just kind of getting vibes from people, and if they obviously tell me anything, that helps. But other altars who are in the front can usually look inside to see who is around, but if someone is cut off that amount from them, they wouldn't be able to see that someone else is there. I think there have been cases too where at least in one direction an altar can see that someone else is there, but communication still doesn't work. It's like they just can't hear them if the awareness is like one way. Where like say a trauma holder was around the front and Josh could see them and hear them and was trying to talk to them, but they couldn't see or hear Josh, as an example. Okay. The other thing that can happen is specific information being blocked, but not communication generally. That happens a lot with me, where someone generally has communication with me, but they can't communicate a specific thing to me. It's like there's something like blocking that specific information from being able to absorb into my like awareness. That has been happening with a lot of the system stuff going on lately, where either a gatekeeper for some reason or our brain automatically, I think a lot of it is that like automatic mechanism, just decides that it's information that I can't handle or can't know for some other reason, and will not let me hear whatever it is, even if Josh is right next to me trying to tell it to me. I can hear him say other things. I can't hear him say whatever the secret thing is. So there are details of things going on that I don't know about because no one is able to communicate it to me, even if they have tried. And I know some of them have tried. So I don't know if that happens as much with alters who are not me. I think some stuff works weird with me specifically. I started talking about this some, but close around the front can work a little differently than close inside. Anything with me is happening around the front because I am always around the front. It can work the same way as alters who are physically close to each other inside, but it can also be more dissociated and blurry and harder to hear each other and talk to each other. Especially if there are alters around who have less good communication with each other. Even if, like in this is a perfect example. I have pretty good communication with Josh. I have decent communication with Raven, and I have lower communication with the anonymous alter who's around. There might actually be more than one, in which case I have very little communication with one of them and none with the others. That makes my overall communication with everybody else worse because it's increasing dissociation and blurring the communication and stuff generally. I guess I think of it kind of like interference or like static or something, like it's just making it harder to hear people even if I usually have good communication with them. Also, things just happening out here in the front or close by inside can lower communication around the front too. The front can be completely cut off from inside. That happens most commonly if there is like especially a full flashback or like active trauma happening in the front. It'll cut off the front from the rest of the inner world. Or if there are things happening close to the front inside that like for instance I can't know about, or like they're protecting someone else around the front or things like that, where it'll cut off the front. I think that's often more intentionally, like to keep me able to work on things while things are going on inside. That I think this has happened like in a live stream before, but that will often be noticeable to me in the moment where I'll be like, oh, my communication was just cut off. I guess something's going on inside. Yeah, but I, at least in the moment, don't tend to know what's going on when it's that type of thing. And I, at least some of the time, probably don't ever know. It's definitely easier for me to host if I don't also know everything going on inside. A lot of it can be stressful, but it's also just distracting and it's a lot to keep track of. And I'm already trying to keep track of all the stuff in the front, so. I'm definitely dissociating a lot because I missed my favorite, or one of my favorite songs from the album I'm listening to, and I didn't notice. Okay. Yeah, it was fun. I thought my air conditioner wasn't on for some reason. Maybe it just got quieter. I'm also definitely overheating some. Is my heart rate high? Ooh, it was earlier. I bet that's when I got up. Yeah, it was. It's not bad. Okay. Okay. So, communication close around the front is what has been largely affected by the recent system stuff that we referenced in our health update video. It's impacting our dissociation levels a lot and our communication levels somewhat because of that, and I think also more directly. It's getting better. In general, it's still harder with some things than others, and some of the time than other times. One of the things that can happen too is when there isn't very good communication with someone who is trying to talk to me inside, that can end up functioning like dissociation, like it's drawing my attention away from whatever I'm trying to do, but I'm not actually able to hear what they're saying. So it's like, it's almost like if it was pulling, like forcing me to focus really hard on like a blank page to try to read what it says, but it doesn't say anything, so I can't read it. But that's something I need to be aware of, especially in case someone is trying to communicate a boundary or a consent issue. If it's not reaching me, that's hard to it's hard to like protect consent and respect boundaries within our system with communication issues if like I don't know what they are, you know? But that's why some of the time we don't try to force it, like we don't push through it really hard in case it's a boundary, especially if it keeps getting worse the more we try to push it. And that's also why we've been avoiding live stuff more than normal, on top of not being able to stream most video games because of the vertigo, which we talked about that in the health update too. Filming something like this that's not live gives at least a second opportunity to double check consent when we edit it. So if communication is better when we're editing it, then there's another chance to check that there's nothing I said that someone wants cut out of the video, things like that. But that's also part of why we checked like some of the specific things that we knew we were going to talk about. We checked those boundaries before filming because the communication and dissociation issues have been worse while filming than while not filming. So yeah, the one that is the most complicated category for our system of internal communication is long distance. So this requires several things in our system. It requires really good communication with the alter you're trying to communicate with, at least the first category that I'm talking about. And this was the thing that Jaden was especially good at and was a big chunk of their job, or at least built into like a lot of aspects of their job. So you need really good communication with them. You need to know where they are in our inner world. There's like a location aspect to that, which I'm going to try to get into that in a little more detail in a second, but there's also a consent aspect built in. So alters who have this kind of communication with each other can turn it off, and they can turn it off completely or like specific to certain alters or like all of that. So they have to be willing to communicate for it to work. Some alters with really good communication like this with each other will basically keep the line open to one or more specific alters. So they'll be kind of like regularly checking in, and so that they know where each other are and can continue doing that. Jaden was just about constantly doing that with a lot of people in our system. They did a lot of passing messages around between people who could only communicate with them, and also people who, like, they were the available alter of who they could find and communicate with, that kind of thing. Alters who keep the line open like that with each other very often have overlapping jobs in some way. Like, Jaden was an exception to this. Jaden did it with a lot of people. But that did also include this, of like protectors who want to, like, let's see, what would be a good example? Like, if okay, especially alters with overlapping jobs who were at the moment doing different jobs. Like, let's say Jade was doing more external protecting type things or more caretaking type things, and Alistair or another internal protector wanted to, like, get Jade's help with an internal protecting thing. They would communicate that to Jade. So there are a lot of, like, basically work related, like co-worker style things like that are kept open. A lot of alters who are just very close with each other, or especially like parent type relationships or other like protective type relationships, will keep the line open like that a lot of the time. Typically in situations like that, if they're going to, like, disconnect, basically, they will communicate where they are first, or keep the line open to one specific alter, or that type of thing. That was often Jaden for a lot of people. For Jaden, it was, oh my god, what's his name? Rex. I'm definitely not completely here. Rex, our main gatekeeper and the leader of the gatekeeping wolf pack, was the one typically who Jaden would keep the line open with if they needed to take a break, basically. So Jaden would occasionally actually take a break, but was still basically always on call. And this is getting off topic, but some of the breaks that Jaden would take would be to be a trauma holder and have flashbacks, basically. So those are not breaks. But that's off topic. But yeah, so if they keep the line open with one specific altar, then they could still be reached if needed without having to trigger them or anything like that. Otherwise, if they tell someone where they are, then someone could physically go there, assuming it's a place someone else can get to if they're needed for something. That kind of thing. There is a less direct long-distance communication thing that we can also do, which is closer to like sounding an alarm or sending out a signal more broadly. But it's basically just like saying, hey, are there any other protectors around who can come help me with this type thing? But it could also get the attention of anybody else. So that's less helpful for a lot of specific scenarios. We have also, especially for the front, used triggers as a form of long distance communication, basically. But weaker triggers would potentially just get the attention of the altar we're triggering, which then, if we're able to have long distance communication, they could like initiate that, and then we could like tell them whatever's going on. But a stronger trigger would allow for like close communication once they are triggered up here. That would be like using a strong trigger, even a strong positive trigger would be for like something pretty important. It's not ideal in most cases, but it is an option. I think that is most of the things that we wanted to talk about for it. So yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments. If you have a system and things work differently in your system, feel free to share stuff like that as well. And any questions you have for us and other things you'd like us to talk about in general. Someone else is here. Might be Alina, actually. I think it is Alina. I think she's been around for most of the video. Oh, I'm hoping by the time I get this video up that there will be a special over on our Patreon. So definitely go check that out. We filmed ourselves without talking, but in real time, knitting a reversible hat. So it's a playlist of the clips of us doing that start to finish in real time with like the knitting sounds and other background sounds like Charlie snoring, which you can probably hear right now, and like a fan sound in the background and things like that. So we turned our noise filter off so you'd be able to hear the knitting sounds, so it has our air conditioner fan in the background and things. But yeah, it's like a calming things. We've had a lot of people say that about our like knitting live streams and stuff that we've done. So yeah. Yeah, definitely check out our Patreon for that. And if it's not up yet, feel free to remind me in comments here or on Patreon or on Discord or any of the places that I didn't set that up yet, and then hopefully I will then. But yeah, like I said, we're not doing as much live currently outside of Patreon, but we are hoping that that will continue to, like, that things like that will continue to become more and more doable, and that will be up for live streams and stuff again soon. But in the meantime, we're trying to do some filming and catch up on some editing and things like that. So yeah, we're gonna put our health and consent and stuff first, but we are working on things and we do want to be able to do that again, so hopefully very soon. Um, um, it doesn't sound like me. But we're getting really blurry or rapid switchy or something and dissociating a lot. I think I said most of the things, but like and subscribe and stuff, and check out all the things below me in the description if you haven't yet. And we will hopefully see you soon. So thanks for watching. Bye.